And I'm excited about this morning's show. I got Mark Rogers coming on in a little bit. I've been trying to get this guy to come on my show forever, and it's nothing. It's nothing that he didn't want to come on or anything like that. I tell you, hell, I've told Mark Rogers this. I've told y'all this too. He's the hardest working man on YouTube. Period. There is no one else that comes close. The guy works a ridiculous amount of hours in his regular job. Which most of you probably know what that is. He's said it before on his channel. I'm not going to say it. If he wants to tell y'all again when he comes on here, he can. But he works a ridiculous amount of hours, especially during the football season, on his regular job. And then you guys see all the work he puts into his YouTube channel. And he's probably the most knowledgeable college football video maker that I know. You know, we can always argue about, you know, somebody's more entertaining or someone's funnier or someone this or someone's that, but just pure football knowledge. If there was like a Jeopardy of college football, I would want Mark Rogers on my team for that. He's probably the most knowledgeable college football fan I know. But
good morning, Lou.
Whoa,
Hey,
Mark Rogers, sir. Jesus Christ. The Red Sea has been parted. Mark Rogers has finally come on live with Uncle Lou. Good morning, sir.
It's interesting that the good book's going to have to be revised. The Red Sea parting again.
Yeah, amazing. How you doing this morning? Are you awake?
I am not quite awake. The alarm went off about 8:08. Now, this is how important and special you are. The alarm went off especially for you. I'm talking college football with you. I'm jumping back into bed and trying to go back to sleep. But that's how important and special you are.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on, and I won't keep you that long, but I did want to have you on, and I was telling the people this morning when I first started the show, I've been trying to get you on forever, but your schedule is ridiculous. You're the hardest working man on YouTube. I've told you that a million times before, especially during football season. Your schedule is just insane, so I'm glad we were able to get this worked out. But let's start here. Let's not waste any time. We'll talk a little bit of football, but I'd like to talk some other stuff on the morning show too. So Thanksgiving is coming up. What does Mark Rogers do for Thanksgiving?
Well, the classic and best way to spend Thanksgiving. So this is my favorite time of year, excluding the weather. So you people down south have to realize when we live up north, like I have for my entire life except for 6 years that I was in the south, that the older I get, the more brittle my bones are, the more I hate the cold. So summer's my favorite time of year. But when it comes to holidays, Christmas is number one. Thanksgiving kind of rolls right into it. So this is my favorite time of year for all of that. So I'm a big seasonal holiday guy. I love that. So Thanksgiving, you know, the food, the football, family. Unfortunately, my family, well, my kids are right here. That's a good thing. But my kids are now 23 and 20. So I'm an old guy. So people don't realize that all the time, but so my kids are a little bit older. So they actually, I can't cook, could never cook, still can't cook. I have certain people in my life telling me I need to learn to cook, but and pulling me in that direction. But so for the past like 15 years, my Thanksgiving, man, I got a boring story for you here. It's just basically work. For Thanksgiving, I got the worldwide leaders got me for Thanksgiving. My Thanksgiving's more like Friday, Saturday. Got my kids back here, and we spend the holiday weekend together, kind of rolling into Friday and Saturday. But I miss my mom. I miss my brother, my sister, the rest of my family out in Ohio for Thanksgiving, but we catch up a little bit later.
And does Mark Rogers go Black Friday shopping?
Oh, this is interesting. I just had a conversation with somebody special in my life about this the other day. Because traditionally, no. Keep me away. I never got into that, never did. But once I went one time, like maybe a year, this was about 10 years ago, my girlfriend at the time dragged me out for Black Friday, and I got hooked. And now I guess just got to run out there and see what's out there. Yeah, I do a little bit, but I'm not hardcore. But I like to see what's out there and maybe pick up a few things and see all the crazy people knocking people down and displays down, and 3 people fighting over the same DVR and the whole deal, all that kind of stuff.
I'm kind of the same way. There has to really be like an expensive item or something to get me to go, stand in line or try to get there early or something like that. And really, that's even changed over the last couple of years because these stores are opening now on Thanksgiving, and I refuse to go on Thursday. I just, if there's some deal, I just won't get it. We usually eat dinner on Thanksgiving around 5 or 6, and that's when these stores are opening now. And I don't know, that's taken some of the fun out of the Black Friday thing, because there was times in the past where I would be like at Circuit City at 4 in the morning when they opened, to get. I remember going there one year to buy a plasma TV. Some people won't even know what that is. I mean, but I still do go on Fridays.
There was one year, as soon as you mentioned that I remember going out, especially for my boy. He wanted some kind of video game that was exclusive, wanted some kind of video game. So I go to Walmart at, like midnight or whatever time it was, and I stand it. It's the whole deal where you got to stand in line. They've got a limited supply, and you got to stand in line for them to open the doors and the whole deal. So I get out there, and if you knew me at the age of, 35 or so, I'm going out. It's like 16 degrees outside in the middle of the night, and I got like shorts and a T-shirt on. I'm standing in line, and I get there a little bit late, so I'm about 75 people deep in line. And I'm standing there for about 10 minutes, and there's a guy about 3 spaces in front of me that's making fun of what I'm wearing. And this just goes on for about 10 minutes. And, has a few choice words for me. For some reason, I have no idea why that offended him so much. But the store clerk comes out about 10 minutes later, after all these people are telling me in front of me that they've been standing out there for 3 hours in the bitter cold. And the store clerk comes out and says, unfortunately, we're going to have to give you a ticket. It's going to be, we've run out of items. We'll give you this ticket. All you have to do is redeem this next Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of just whisper to the guy as I'm walking by him, who's the idiot now? And I just, keep strolling. But, remember those late Fridays, on Black Friday.
Yeah, I still go every Friday, every year. For kind of what you said in the beginning, I like to see the people running around, fighting over the last, $9 set of Tupperware that's on sale for $4 or whatever it is. I find it entertaining. So I'll probably go out again this Friday. But I do most of my shopping on Amazon now. I don't know. A lot of people are probably that way too. I already have a pile sitting out here. Of stuff. I got an early start this year.
My kids got to a point when they were like 8 years old already, at that point, that they were sending me links for Christmas and their birthday. It completely took any kind of imagination out of the process. And they were like, this is what I want, the exact copy, the exact color. And that's been what that's become for the last however many years in terms of, shopping online. That's what I do for Christmas, definitely.
Yeah. All right, a couple of food questions, and then we'll get off the Thanksgiving thing. Ham or turkey?
Turkey.
Yeah,
it's a tough call, as you could see, though.
Yeah, I'm a ham person in general. In other words, 99 times out of 100, if I go to the store for lunch meat, I'm going to get ham. But for Thanksgiving, I do like the turkey.
That's exactly how I approach that too. That's why the hesitation. I thought, ham the rest of the year, but turkey on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and those leftover turkey sandwiches, like, you can't beat a fresh baked ham, and then on Thursday, and then all weekend, the turkey sandwiches with that leftover ham is amazing.
I am not a guy that gets into leftovers the rest of the year. Again, I'm not saving food from restaurants and keeping it for 2 days and eat. I just don't do that. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, it's just different. Yeah, I can eat it for a couple of days, and it hits about Saturday sometime. I'm like, okay, I've had enough of this same food, and that's about it. But love the leftovers.
Yeah, me too. All right, we'll talk a little bit of football, I guess, since this technically is a football channel. Rivalry weekend. Before we get into any of the games or anything like that, what rivalry is it that's gone now that we need to come back? Is it clearly Texas A&M, or is there some other game that used to be played that's not anymore that we need to have back in college football?
As soon as you posed the question, two games popped into my head. One was Texas A&M, and I think that would be my priority just because of the status of the two programs right now. I thought of Nebraska, Oklahoma as well. I know they've got a series coming up here in the next, 48 years, whenever they scheduled it. But Nebraska, Oklahoma was just enormous when I was growing up. But of course, with the change in conferences. But the reason I say Texas A&M would be the one I would target was, even though Texas not playing good football this year, and Texas A&M is going to be a 5-loss team, they're at a place where both of them can be elite, could be elite, and they need to get on the field together. Nebraska, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And so Texas A&M, yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind.
Now, Texas and Texas A&M fans each blame the other school for the reason that we can't get that game made. What is the real story? Do you know? I don't.
I don't know, and you know what? I'm so bad at this and have so many people talking to me like you do. I've had different fans explain this to me throughout the years, and I can't remember.
Yeah.
Well, I think I have heard about 3 contradictory stories blaming each other back and forth. But yeah, that game needs to get played. I understand the dilemma you guys have as Georgia fans. I think it's a dilemma because you've got a rival in Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech's obviously not really on your radar from a competitive standpoint most of the time. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not. But I do have to say that if you're Florida State and you're running up against a typical Florida State team, and that's got to be one of your non-conference games, then you're at a somewhat of a disadvantage in regards to trying to schedule another game that has the same weight. Like Iowa State, they always play each other, and I rip on those two schools every year when I review the schedules and rank the schedules because they say, if you're an Iowa fan, you have to have the most boring schedule every year because the schedule release is we're playing Iowa State, we're playing 2 MAC schools or an FCS school, and that's our schedule. We never go out and schedule anybody else across the country that's going to be interesting or challenging because we always play Iowa State, and we're too afraid to go play somebody else too. You guys don't do that, of course. Your schedule is crazy coming up, as you well know, in about 10 years when you're basically playing the top 5 teams in America constantly.
Which I think is ridiculous, by the way. I mean, the odds, that one year where we have to play Texas and Florida State in the same year,
yeah.
I mean, you can almost, I hate to say it, you can almost write that year off. It's hard to imagine Georgia running through the SEC and beating Texas and Florida State and Georgia Tech all in the same regular season. I actually don't like that. My goal is to get to the playoffs, not to have exciting regular season games. I mean, I enjoy maybe one big road game or non-con game a year, but that one year where we have to play Texas and Florida State is just ridiculous. A bunch of people mentioned Oklahoma and Nebraska along with you too in the comments section, but Clemson and South Carolina, they're legally required to play. Did you know that?
Yeah, there's a few agreements out there where state legislation has said you will play.
Yeah, or no state funding.
What was funny, or no state funding? What was kind of interesting was that went into effect for Ohio State playing MAC schools in 1998. So imagine this. It's the first year of the BCS, and the Ohio legislation with their great timing said, we're going to mandate that Ohio State has to play a MAC school, or basically a MAC school, another Ohio team, which turns out to be a MAC school, every year. The very first year of the BCS, Ohio State was consensus number 1 through the entire series and season until they ran into Nick Saban. Nick Saban comes to town with Michigan State as a 4-touchdown underdog, and they upset Ohio State. Ohio State still runs the rest of the table, beats Michigan, finishes 11-1. there was a logjam of 11-1 teams: Wisconsin, Florida State, Ohio State, Arizona, UCLA, to play Tennessee for the national championship. And because of the BCS formula at that point, and Ohio State beating a one-win Toledo team, that was enough to knock Ohio State out of the number 2 spot where they would have played for the national championship that year. Instead, they go play in the Sugar Bowl, and the Ohio legislation screws Ohio State on the very first year of the BCS because of their stupid mandate.
Speaking of the BCS and sort of how that's evolved, and then where we are now with the 4 teams, and of course that current TV agreement runs through, I think, 2024. What do you think's going to happen then in 2025? Is there any way they will keep it at 4 teams, or do you think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that it's going to expand?
So we're 6 years away. I think there's going to be enough upheaval and enough of a money grab there that I think we're looking at 8 teams, and I think it's going to continue in the process of selection, although I think they're going to get a few more stipulations in there to try to include other conferences, or maybe the group of 5, give them an auto spot, something like that. Because I'm a firm believer that it's a farce that the group of 5 teams are even in the top 25 rankings. It's kind of like a tease that, yeah, we consider you, but we'll never put you in the top 4. And it's not like I think any of those teams are top 4 teams. That's not the deal. It's that there just should be some transparency to say, you know what, why don't you guys go play your own championship
right
in the group of 5?
You might as well rank FCS teams. I mean, you might as well, put North Dakota State at 20 then. I mean, it's no different than putting Central Florida at 10 that one year, because like you said, there's no way. They're just not getting in. Everyone knows that. It's not a matter of whether it's fair or not. It doesn't matter whether it's fair or not. It's just not happening, period. We all know that. I would be open, though, to using sort of the same deal they have now, where they guarantee the one group of 5 gets a New Year's Six bowl based on whoever's ranked higher and wins their conference or whatever. If you go to 8 teams, maybe do that, but with the playoffs. So you're guaranteed one group of 5 team in the playoffs every year or something, and give them a shot. If not, like you said, just quit pretending. Stop ranking them. Let them do their own thing, maybe in the postseason or something. Have a group of 5 playoff or something. But yeah, it's ridiculous that they even. It's sort of one foot in, one foot out. Like, okay, yeah, if you go 12-0, 13-0, like being ranked in the top 10 is like winning it all. If you're a group of 5 team, that's about as high as you can hope to go, right?
Yeah, I think what the selection committee needs to do is go on a tour. Go on a tour every August and visit every group of 5 school. And basically, in the middle of 2-a-days, they bring the teams together. And they have an announcement and basically say, I just want to introduce ourselves. We're the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. This is what we do, A, B, and C. And I just want to let you know that as you guys are out here puking your guts out and just having a great time during 2-a-days here, just want to let you know that everything that you're playing for, all your aspirations in winning a championship, are absolutely null and void. You could go out there and win every game 50-0, and you have absolutely no shot to win a national championship. So, good day. Have a good day, and we'll see you later in the Liberty Bowl.
All right. If things go according to chalk the rest of the way, and it comes down to the committee having to decide between 11-1 Alabama, and for the purposes of this conversation, let's say they beat Auburn by 14. So not a blowout, but a comfortable win over a 20th ranked team, whatever Auburn happens to be, and Oklahoma at 12-1 with a Big 12 title, and Utah 12-1 with a Pac-12 title. Who's the 4th team?
So if you want me to select the 4th best team in the country or one of the top 4 teams in the country, I select Alabama. It's similar to the Alabama-LSU conundrum after 2011. I had all sorts of people asking me, who should be in the national championship game, and I said LSU and Oklahoma State, and they said, oh, you think Oklahoma State's better than Alabama? I said, no. That's not what I'm saying. If there was a tournament tomorrow, I'd put my mortgage on LSU and Alabama being the top two teams coming out of that tournament. But they already played, already determined that. Therefore, I want conference representation, unless somebody wins a conference and they're 8-4 under this current system. I don't want to see them. But I go the Oklahoma route just because I think they earned it with a conference championship. I think, based on what I know of the talent on the field, that I would take Alabama in a heartbeat against either one of those teams on a neutral field.
This brings me back to something we were talking about a second ago. Do you think conference championships will survive playoff expansion to 8 teams? Because there are people who I would be in favor of doing away with them.
So when you say do away with conference championships, do you mean just
the game
in terms of some kind of automatic selection? Because that's already been done away with. They've already disbanded that to a certain extent. They take it into consideration, but that was a big emphasis the first year. That was a big emphasis in their defense for leaving out TCU and Baylor, and just one of their big talking points, and then continued to be from there until it kind of broke down 2 years later. So I think under the current format that I'm a big conference champion guy, and I think that should be weighted extremely heavily because I think there's a reason we have conferences. Why not just disband the whole thing,
right,
list the teams 1 through 130, and just let them play and say we're just going to select the 4 best teams? I think there's a reason. I know that the SEC is better than the Pac-12 from watching football, and I think it's decidedly better, substantially better than the Pac-12. But we basically have 2 games to go by this year, and one was pretty inconclusive with Cal and Ole Miss playing 2 lower division teams, playing down to the last second of the game, didn't really prove who was better. Even the Oregon-Auburn game didn't prove who was better. We see that Oregon's capable of losing to Arizona State in their own conference. So based on objectivity, I can't say that the SEC is better than the Pac-12. I'll say it based on my judgment call and what I think I should do as a college football analyst. But the conferences just don't play enough meaningful games against each other for us to objectively rank them toward a playoff. So I love the conference championships. I think there need to be 8 teams, and then we get the best of both worlds that way because we include all the conference champions, but we can also be selective in the process of saying the SEC is the best conference in America. That number 2 team needs to be in there, and maybe the number 3 team needs to be in there because we've got 2 wild cards. Now, I would be a little leery of going 3, but that I think with the 8 teams you can do both. You can have fair representation of conference champions and reward that, and then you can also select the best teams.
Yeah, I just I don't know. You have Notre Dame. You know they can play 12 games and get in. The Alabama example from 2017, and they have a chance to do it again. They can play 12 games and get in. I can't think of a scenario where a team who wasn't going to get into the playoffs, except for the fact that they ended up winning their 13th game, got in. It seems like the 13th game has done nothing but keep teams out, not allow a team to earn its way in. In other words, everybody that wins their conference championship and ends up getting in was in the top 4 the week before those conference championships were played anyway. But then there's a whole bunch of examples of teams who were in the top 4 and then lost their conference championship game, and Georgia last year. So
I somewhat changed my mind on Notre Dame watching those conference championship games last year. Because for me, I had always said Notre Dame plays a tough schedule. Now, it didn't turn out to be a tough schedule last year with USC down, Virginia Tech down, Stanford down, a few other teams were down. Florida State was on the schedule. It looks like, in terms of brand names, looked like a killer schedule. turned out to be a mediocre schedule. So I thought, yeah, Notre Dame's earned it. They've gone 12-0. Then I'm sitting there watching the conference championship games thinking, why does Notre Dame get a pass? Why are they sitting home? They've got this fake ACC schedule of sorts where they're playing the ACC 5 games, but they're not part of the ACC. And I'm thinking, and we're going to be arguing between Oklahoma and Ohio State, who have won 2 major conferences, and Oklahoma doesn't have the ridiculous bad loss that Ohio State has, but Ohio State's got better wins, and I think they're a slightly better team. But the committee's going to have to decide between those two, while Notre Dame should be playing that Final Four playoff game between Notre Dame and Clemson. That should have been the ACC championship game. That would have solved everything, and we could have had Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama in last year.
Yeah, and you know who else deserves some blame for the current Notre Dame situation is the ACC. They really shouldn't allow that. I mean, they're in the ACC 100% in basketball and probably some other sports too. I don't know, but then in football,
across the board they are.
But football is just, well, as long as you just play 5 of our teams a year, we'll let you be actually in the ACC and these other things. I just either get in a conference or don't. This half in, half out thing. All right, last topic real quick, and then I'll let you go. Do you watch any NFL at all?
Oh, I love the NFL.
Okay.
Love the NFL.
Yeah, because, there's a lot of college people that are, college and that's it. And then there's some that are diehard both, and then you have some that are maybe casual NFL. I consider myself sort of a casual. Like, I plan my week around college football. Like, it's that serious to me. NFL on Sundays, if I get everything else done that I have to do with both work and family and chores, yard work, whatever, and I happen to have an hour to sit down and watch a little bit of NFL, I'll do it. But it's not a make or break thing for me. But you're diehard, huh?
Yeah. So if you would have caught me anytime between the age of 10 and 30 something, I was the guy that could recite every NFL playoff game in history, knew everybody on everybody's roster. Literally, at one point in my life, somebody said something about an NFL playoff game, and I said, boom, 1982, and I said, yeah, I've got every game. I didn't intentionally sit there and memorize them. That wasn't what I did. I just, stats and scores seem to stick to my brain.
Yeah.
But, the way I watch it now is just, I'm a casual fan. We're doing what we're doing with college football, so that's got to be the priority. Then, like you got other obligations in life, people that are more important than watching NFL football. So I'll sit down with my boy for a couple hours on a Sunday afternoon, but I don't read about it. I don't know about the trades and the free agency. I don't do anything like that. I just enjoy watching some NFL for a few hours every week.
And what about your dad when you were a kid? Was he an NFL guy, a college guy, not a sports guy at all?
I got into football from some of the friends that I had in grade school. That's how I got into it, and then I almost kind of brought my dad back into it. So I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and it was funny, Lou, because 1 year in grade school I'd be playing out backyard football with my boys, and like I don't know what's going on. Like I'm like 7, 8 years old, and they're talking about blitzing and all this stuff, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I dove into it, and within a year, like I got rosters memorized, and I went full bore on the whole deal. And what I noticed was suddenly my dad, being a football fan and a sports fan from years ago, then got into it because I got into it and started watching the games with me, and we had a Friday night ritual where we would pick all the college and the NFL games, and we kept track of our records, and we did that for years and years and years, and I've always been fascinated with picking the games, and back then it had nothing to do with a point spread, but just picking the games, but that's always been an angle of it I've enjoyed as well. So yeah, I loved playing catch with the football with my dad, and we picked the games and watched the games, and he'd have his interesting analysis on the NFL and college games. Yeah, I remember one year, talk about rivalry week, and this kind of maybe wraps it up in regards to your your question about my dad, I remember one day we're watching, this is back when you got a newspaper, and the paper boy would come around once a week and want to collect. And we're watching the Ohio State-Michigan game. You know, there's not a car on the street anywhere. Everybody's locked in on this game, and we're sitting there watching the game. The doorbell rings, and it's the paper boy. My dad walks out, and my dad was like a very fun guy, telling jokes all the time, nicest guy to anybody. But on this particular occasion, he's like, son, what's your problem? He said, do you know what time it is? Do you know what's going on right now? Kid's like, huh? What? He's like, you shouldn't be out collecting for your newspaper right now. Ohio State and Michigan are playing right now. Why don't you just go home?
That's a serious game up there. Like, I do think in the South, people are more passionate in general, obviously, about college football than anywhere else in the country. But there are certain games where those fans can rival anything we do here down in the South, and Michigan, Ohio State is obviously one of those games. Is there any chance, I'm going to let you go, I promise this is the last question, any chance, because this is the same thing that happened last year, does Michigan have any chance against Ohio State? I mean, we saw the same script last year, all the hype in the offseason for Michigan, lose a couple of games, people are scratching their head, what's going on, no offense. Middle of October comes around, they start scoring 40 points a game and blowing everybody out. They were actually favored heading into the Ohio State game last year, and they got ran out of the building. And that's the same story we followed this year. Michigan's on a roll again this year. They found an offense suddenly. People are expecting a good game. Any chance for Michigan, or is this going to be the same thing we've been seeing from them?
So everything you said is just completely on the mark, correct. The script seems nearly the same. The couple distinctions I'll make in Michigan's favor, but also Ohio State's favor, is that actually going into the game last year for the first time in a while, I was like, let's take common opponents. And I went right down the line. They had about 5 common opponents. And you could easily make the case Michigan's a better football team than Ohio State. They have played all these common opponents and dominated them. And Ohio State has failed to dominate these common opponents. And Michigan looked like the better team. Ohio State had the 71st ranked defense in America, which shows you how screwed up they were last year. They've got the same personnel. They've lost a defensive back to the NFL and Draymond Jones to the NFL, and they've got the rest of the personnel is the same, and they've got a better defense by leaps and bounds than what they were screwing around last year with Greg Schiano and Alex Grinch. But Michigan was the better team on paper going into it last year, and obviously we know what happened. This year, Ohio State looks like the best team in the country, and Michigan has turned a corner of sorts. We'll see if it's reality against an elite opponent. But once they flip the switch against Penn State in that second half, they've been a different football team, and they're actually running an offense that maybe Kirby Smart should adapt, actually spreading people out and using their skill at wide receiver, and they've kind of flipped the switch and are doing offensively what they told us they were going to do all season, or maybe they just put it together all of a sudden, and they have played some decent opponents in that stretch to give us some validation. Notre Dame, Indiana, the second half against Penn State. And for the Buckeyes, I'm a bit concerned with Justin Fields' hand. He's been banged up in recent weeks. He's landed on his lower back. That gave him some problems for a week. Obviously not serious problems, 33 touchdowns, 1 pick, but he's got a left hand issue. He's been beat up a little bit here recent weeks. Wisconsin tagged him up a little bit. They had a good pass rush, and then last week against Penn State, that was an extremely physical game. The J.K. Dobbins ran the ball 36 times. I don't know if he can really come back and lug it like that if they get into that kind of game with Michigan. So I do see some glimmers of hope from Michigan, but Ohio State's just so ultra-talented. I don't think Michigan's going to lay the egg that we've seen them lay in the past, specifically last year when on paper they were the better team, had played the better season at least. I think these teams playing at their best, I think Michigan's going to give it an effort. I just can't pull the trigger. We'll see later this week when I make my official pick. But I think there's some glimmers of hope at home for Michigan to do something. And obviously they're going to be playing loose and fancy free. They've got nothing to lose to just lay it all out there on the line. So it could be intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah, probably the biggest game this weekend in terms of playoffs and all that. Last question is a one-word answer, and then I'm going to let you go. In fact, I'm going to make you answer this with just one word. True or false? Defense wins championships.
True.
Mark Rogers, thank you for coming on, proving with his last word that he is indeed the smartest person on YouTube. Mark, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. You guys subscribe to Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Most of you know him. If you don't, go to YouTube right now, type in Mark Rogers, subscribe to this man. Hardest working man on YouTube. Mark, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. I know you're going to be super busy, but hope you get some time off there to relax and take it easy and enjoy the holidays. So thanks again for coming on.
Lou, your channel's amazing. I love it. Enjoy it. People ask me if I watch YouTube, and they bring up a zillion different shows, and my typical answer is no. They bring you up, and I say, I don't have a whole lot of time to take it in, but when I can, I'm going to see what Lou has to say. So amazing stuff that you create each and every day as well. Happy Thanksgiving to you, sir.
Thanks, Mark. I'll talk to you later. One of my favorite people, forget YouTube people or regular people, whatever, one of my favorite people, Mark Rogers, joining us on the show this morning. I've been trying for a while to get him on, and he is just very, very busy. He sort of mentioned it. He sort of glossed over it, but he mentioned the mothership, which of course is ESPN. Mark Rogers has a full-time job at ESPN, so if you're subscribed to him and you're scrolling through your YouTube feed or whatever, and you see all those Mark Rogers videos popping up, I want you to keep in mind that on top of doing all of that on YouTube, it's ridiculous the amount of content he produces and uploads on YouTube. In addition to all that, the man is working a full-time job at ESPN. He's not like us or whatever, bagging groceries and doing this in our spare time or whatever. The guy does nothing but work. He literally lives and breathes college football. So, Mark, thank you for coming on. Hope you guys enjoy that.